Colin is an interesting guy. I mean, he is hilarious. Some of the off-camera video is really funny. I spent the whole interview basically laughing. You're going to really enjoy it. If you're an existing APB user, there's so much information in there as to future plugins, future development of the product. There's talk about the Thunderbolt ports. There's talk about how everything runs, what the circuitry is, how it passes through the McDSP. And if you're a new user and you're wanting to buy into it, this is going to be really good for you, because it's going to really teach you exactly what this does. Now, one of the key questions I asked Colin was about what a lot of people kind of couldn't get their head round. Is it analog? Is it digital? Is it plugins? What is it? How does it work? This is one question that is kind of highlighted, and we really get to the bottom of this. And you know, I know it's analog. You know, I've used it. It sounds analog. It just doesn't look like analog. Okay, firstly, please tell us about what McDSP, the APB, is.
Sure. So, well, McDSP's been modeling gear for like 25 years, and about 5 or 6 years ago, we thought, you know, what if we could take all this software modeling we've been doing and having the brain, as I would call it, instead of having to control like a software algorithm, take that out and add in an analog algorithm. And we're like, I don't know, that could be kind of cool or it could be horrible. And some of the permutations were, in fact, horrible. But at some point, we sort of narrowed it down to, oh, these types of circuits that we can make work really well. They don't overheat. We can monitor their temperature and things like that to make sure it's a reliable, repeatable analog experience. And made one channel of it. It sounded good. We thought, how many channels can you get into a box? Yeah, about 16. And that's what the APB 16 became. So, you know, just the idea was, is that, you know, immediate session recall, you know, consistent performance across all channels, presets, you know, just stuff like that. So all the things that you just can't get with a piece of analog outboard gear. You know, I mean, analog outboard gear is great. So is working in the box, just that we thought, you know, it'd be cool to really combine sort of the two workflows together. And I think that people who like to sound analog would like that, you know, controlled from the convenience of a plugin, but it's really, you know, an analog, you know, workflow, if you will.
It's a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, it turned out pretty cool.
It brings the best of both worlds together. There's pros and cons to both. Bring them both together, and you have the APB, which, the only kind of downside to the APB is the whole you don't get the hands-on feel. I thankfully, using the S4, I can map everything so it feels like I'm actually on it. So that's a really good thing for me, is that I feel like I'm on analog, I sound like I'm on analog, and I might as well be on analog.
Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of people. I like used to go, I'd like to have one of those boxes and one of those boxes. Oh, this is awesome. Yeah, that's nice, you know. But it's like, yes, that's part of the analog experience. But you know, we're just trying to say, well, after you get over that, you know, there's you know, you still want to have plenty of outboard gear. I'm not stopping anyone, but for some recallable mixing capability with analog processing, the APB is a good solution.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So can you show us inside the box and explain kind of what the signal path is?
Can do. And I just happen to have a box right here with the lid off. Okay. So first starting with, you know, here's the front, APB, APB 16, fine, whatever. Going to the back. Okay, in the back, and there's better pictures of this on the internet, but there's really two connectors. There's your Thunderbolt and there's your word clock. Because if you're going to sync, you know, to another system, got to have word clock connectivity so you can sync everybody up. There are two Thunderbolt ports. In case you want to daisy chain more than one APB together, you can daisy chain up to 5. That's up to 80 analog channels in a single Thunderbolt bus. You'll see here we have the newer USB-C connectors like you get in Thunderbolt 3, 4, and 5. So thank you, European Union, for making Apple stick with the same connector. We'll have this for probably a long, long time. Yay. Anyway, so let's go inside. So down. So again, here are the Thunderbolt guys right here. So like, you know, over one Thunderbolt cable, all the audio is going in, and the control signal that's married to it. So you have sample accurate control of the audio going in as we program the analog signal path. And then the audio is returned back to the same Thunderbolt cable. So there you go. And then here is our Thunderbolt card, which then will take all the data and transfer to what we call a main board. The main board where we say, okay, some of you people are audio signals and some of you people are control signals. We're going to split you up and organize you. And so it does all this. And this is maybe a part that'll be harder to see. Let's look at one myself here. But right here, this big monster ribbon cable, and that's where all the signals have been parsed out. So you have your analog signal and you have a control signal, and then they go to these 16 channels, and there's like no less than 16 of them. If you want to count the bright red Lima caps, but each one of those, vertically up and down, is an analog channel. Up here at the top where my middle finger is, that's where there's like these little squares at the top. Those are your 32-bit AKM converters, some of the fanciest converters made. There's gold inside of them, for crying out loud. And then we have your Burr Brown op amps and your VAT VCAs and your WEMA caps and yada yada yada, and it's all just here in a line. And then so people sometimes ask me, well, there's no tubes inside, there's no transformers. I'm like, oh, that's right. Tubes. 16 channels of tubes in one box, that's going to overheat. Transformers, they're also kind of hot and also can generate a lot of interference with each other. So these channels, they're all made out of pretty much all modern components. I'm not trying to diss like older things, like a tube or like a transform technology. They're all great. Just if you want to have 16 channels in a box, this is how you're going to do it. So, and it all comes down here, and the signals are processed. There's no fewer than 3 saturation circuits per channel. So besides the programmable analog stuff, we also have programmable analog circuitry for saturation, so that when you're getting ready to go back to the digital domain, we will take the signal to its maximum analog level, and if you get too hot, we're going to saturate it. So by the time you reach that A to D converter to go back to digital and back in the box, you're never going to clip digitally. You're only going to saturate in the analog domain, and then we'll transfer it back. And that's like another big thing about the APB is that if you use outboard gear, when you're going back into your DAW, you can't clip going in, or you would have just destroyed whatever it is you did in the analog domain. So the APB takes care of that for you. It's like, don't worry, go as loud as you want. You can saturate all day, but whatever signal's coming back into the DAW, if it is saturated, it's saturated in the analog domain. There's no digital clipping. Anyway, so we go, from the main board, the big wide ribbon cable, down through all these channels. Here's 8 on this side, 8 on the other side, down to the bottom. Geez, and they basically all, and it's hard to see, they all get wrapped back around. You can almost see the path. They go down here, more fancy pants stuff, down, and then back into the same ribbon connector, which is like, okay, you people are processed digital signal, right? Because here's the converters again, somewhere in there. And then so the conversions, and again, we're back here at the main board. We got a digital signal, give it back to the Thunderbolt board, back up to the same one Thunderbolt cable, and back to your computer. Was that an adequate explanation, Paul, of just how it goes?
What's the latency with it?
I love that question. So bizarrely, because it's analog, the box itself, like the analog signal path I just described, there's zero. So, but to buffer up with the DAWs to sync up, right now we have latency of around 2,000 samples, which is something somebody might be working on. His name might be Colin, another guy named Chris, and another guy named Glenn. Maybe. Also another guy named Chris. There's 2 Chris's. Very strange. At least they spell their names differently. Anyway, I digress. So to know people, one of the biggest questions they ask is, hey, what's the latency? Because that'd be really cool if I could do real-time tracking through that. And that is not currently a feature in the APB, but that is something within the realm of possibilities. So I don't want to like state something that a feature that the product does not have that it may have. But you're talking to the engineer, not the marketing guys. I'll just tell you how it works. Yeah, actually, if the DAWs just give us a small buffer of audio with no jitter in it, yeah, I mean, it totally could be low enough for real-time recording. We just need the DAW, because the DAWs, DAWs themselves are an amazing thing in themselves. They're taking all these tracks and they buffer them all together and they play it back for you. Well, here's my 60 tracks. Here's my 600 tracks. I'm old enough to remember the days at DigiDesign where I used to work, where it'd be wow, we have 48 tracks. Isn't that so amazing? Wow. Oh, angels are singing. And now people are like, 48 only? It's like,
Yeah.
the Beatles got by with 4 tracks. Well, we're not the Beatles, okay? So we need more tracks. Anyway, so, but I digress. Anyway, so what was I talking about? Anyway, lots of tracks. So the DAWs themselves, when they buffer up all these channels, they're aligning everything sample line for playback, which is great. But so to do that, there's different buffering going on. So when we ask, hey, could you please give us some buffers of audio to send down to our APB and come back up? We just need a DAW to treat us, basically like as if we were a live input with a low amount of jitter. And if that was to ever happen, yes, there is a possibility that the APB latency will be reduced tremendously and possibly in the ballpark of suitable for real-time tracking. But that is not, to be very clear for your people watching your video, this is not a feature yet. But if you're asking me, the engineer, how the box works, the box internally has zero. Okay, I'm sorry. I said that it has 15 samples of latency for the D to A and like 14 samples or something for the 80. Other than that, it's got zero latency because it's analog. Remember, it's analog, everyone. It's but it's got Thunderbolt. And no, it's got Thunderbolt to go in and out. You just let that go because once you're in the box, it's analog. It comes in, it comes out right away. I'm done. Analog, I'm done. Nope, don't need a buffer. I'm done. So, yes, so the possibility is there. And I sure to myself personally, that definitely is a design goal and the capabilities within the box. We just have to coordinate a little bit with some DAW manufacturers and see where it lands.
So if you had 5 units stacked together, daisy chained, would that get times by 5?
No.
So if you've got 2,000 samples of delay, that would be for all 5. It wouldn't be 10,000.
All 5.
Okay.
Great question. Yeah, it's just across all of them because the Thunderbolt's pretty ridiculously fast already. It's just the buffering of it. So that's a great question, though, Paul. That's actually one of the best questions I've ever had.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I feel compelled to make another video for our own website. Hey, by the way, that latency, it's total. It's like you daisy chain a bunch of boxes together. Each one gets later and later and later. That's not how that works.
So you can Thunderbolt. So per Thunderbolt, you can run 5 devices. So if you've got 6 Thunderbolts,
you could. I do know there's one client I'm aware of.
I've seen
that has he's got like 10 and they got that a set of 5 and a set of 5. And I'm like, okay, just make sure they're on separate Thunderbolt buses, and you have to look in your computer spec will tell you which ones are which, and then you're like, yeah, there you go. And it's bizarre. It's that little tiny USB-C connector, and it's like, it's crazy. But and keep in mind that we can do this even with Thunderbolt 2, which is half as fast as Thunderbolt 3/4/ whatever. So we already have at Thunderbolt 3 and 4. We already have like twice the bandwidth that we need to do the same thing. So but yeah, and I guess other people ask me. So I'm waving my hands in front of my face. That's dumb. People say, "Oh, what about Thunderbolt 2? You guys like dropping support for that?" I'm like, no, it's all tested to work for forever. That's the plan. And if some people wanted to know, maybe we could offer a Thunderbolt 3 upgrade for those who wanted it, or you could just buy that $50 cable that Apple makes, and then you're still off to the races. It's on Apple, and probably also have to tip my hat to the European Union again and go, yeah, whatever you guys were saying to Apple about, hey, don't change the stupid connector ever again. Yeah. Oh, by the way, all the Thunderbolt devices, while we're at it, they should all just still work too.
The next question is, how does it differ from, let's say, the UAD DSP plugins?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, Universal Audio has some pretty smart people like Dr. David Berners. David Berners is like one of the main engineers at Universal Audio. I mean, there's lots of other people there. I just don't know all of them. And also, curiously, his initials are DB. I think is super cool. Anyway, so he has a PhD from Stanford, and his PhD is in modeling analog circuitry. He is super good at it. So you have like a super brainiac guy who, and many others on their teams of engineers who model lots of gear, just like McDSP has done for the last 25 years. And they, instead of like having like a software component, there's some kind of model that controls a software component, but their software component is inside, the Universal Audio box. Now, more recently, Universal Audio has their native versions of their stuff, so they can take it out of the DSP version, like the in the box, native version. I'm rambling too much. The difference is that, what they're doing is they have an analog model, but they're still driving it with a digital algorithm. We have an analog model that we drive with an analog algorithm. It is, it is analog. That's what it is. We do sometimes combine some hybrid digital processing with some analog processing. Like we have like an equalizer called the Royal Q.
That's brilliant, by the way.
Yeah,
that's a really good EQ.
It's totally just a digital equalizer, except it knows what it's doing, and it communicates this in some ways that are clever to the analog circuitry. Hey, by the way, so let's like customize this output stage so that we do something smart when I do whatever it is I'm doing with my EQ boosts and cuts and stuff. And like, well, that sounds pretty good. Yes, it does. And even that is like something I would say is like what I think is another combination of the best things. It's like, I want an equalizer. Well, you can pretty much nail an EQ response in digital domain that you would have gotten in the analog domain. However, that analog output stage is still kind of part of the mojo of even just an outboard piece of equalization, stuff. So we tried that, and it sounds really good. It's really good.
Yeah, that EQ is really good. I remember when I first used that EQ, having been told that it was technically a plugin that was then utilizing the. I didn't think much of it before actually hearing it. Then hearing it, I was like, whoa, this has got something else that isn't in another plugin. I just thought it was going to be another plugin with, going through a little bit of circuitry, but it's far, far more than that.
Yeah, it turns out really good. And also I tell people, it's not just the control signal going into the box to do the analog processing, but we know what the analog process has been selected. So it's almost like we also have an analog control what comes back digitally. I don't know how to explain that without giving away too much secret sauce stuff, but everything, the two systems communicate with each other very well. Like, hey, I'm doing this. Cool, I got you here. Cool, I'm doing this now. No problem, I got you here. Everything's cool.
The next question, so how is it possible for a compressor and EQ and saturation to all utilize the same components? How can each compressor sound different yet utilize those same components?
Wow, that's a fair question. So as I showed earlier in the video, there is a lot of parts all crammed together. And when I say they're crammed together, they are crammed together. If you know all the fundamental pieces, you need like a detection circuit, you need like some circuits actually going to do the actual, gain manipulation. The saturation circuits, kind of each one's like their own like sort of animal. So those are just kind of like, choose one. Maybe there's a parameter or two to parameterize each one. But just back to that EQ dynamic range compression action. I mean, if you just know all the bits and pieces that you need, you can make this sort of like an engine that does it, and it can do a lot of things. You just have to know which screw to turn to make it do. Oh, now it's like, wow, that sounds a lot like tape compression. Yes, it does, because it is. It is what tape compression is. Oh, okay. What's that one? Whoa, that sounds just like a brick wall limiter. How'd you do that? Because that's what it is. It's just all inside this one circuit. So, parts are enabled, or parts are disabled, or parts are used in a different way. There may have been a few times at the office where someone would see me like pull off my headphones and go, ow, because, that feedback path, I was really sure went that way. And I was wrong. And went right into my ears. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Analog feedback. That was really awesome. We're never going to make that into a product. Going to get sued by everybody that has fancy big speakers in their studio. I'm pretty sure these headphones are now shot, whatever. I have like a small pile of like headphones I've destroyed. And I go, no, they're the wounded warriors. We're never going to throw them away. We're just going to keep them in a pile. That's why we use headphones when we test the audio. Yeah. Well, because I want to use the speaker. No, do not use speakers when testing the algorithm on the APB for the first time, please. Just use a nice small pair of headphones that if you destroy it, we're safe. Anyway, sorry, I digress there. So basically, it's an entire engine inside that can do a variety of things, and we just pick and choose which parts we want, or we combine them in different ways, and it works really well. Yeah.
Sounds good. Will Windows compatibility be anything near to the future or anything in the pipeline?
It is certainly on the table. I'll tell you that the reason there is no Windows right now is that when we certify, we have to any Thunderbolt device, you have to certify with Apple and Intel at the same time. And at the time of certification, they say, do you have Windows and Apple support? We say, well, we thought we'd do the Apple version first and come up with Windows later. And they say, well, that's fine, but we're going to stamp your boxes Apple, Mac OS only. Okay, so if you want Windows, you have to come back, give us a pile of money, with this entire exercise again, and then we'll have Windows. And we're like, okay, well, good to know now that you told us that. So that's the only real reason. I had nothing against Windows. I think both computer systems drive me crazy. So, but yeah, I think Windows is a possibility. We just don't have it now. I'm sorry.
Would over Windows, would you still get the ability to have 5 devices on one Thunderbolt?
I would think so, because Thunderbolt is a specification. So if it's like 5 Thunderbolt devices daisy chained together from the Mac OS, I believe those same specs exist for Windows, which is why we chose it. We wanted something we knew would work the same across Windows and Mac OS. Just when we came at the point to certify the APB 16s and 8s, and we learned a subtle thing is that, oh, well, if you don't have support for both right now, we're going to tag your boxes Mac only. And we're like, oh, well, okay. We just gave you a lot of money. I thought maybe you got to go back and do it again. All right, fine. You're 2 giant gorilla companies. We don't want to mess with you. Intel, Apple. I know you have your rules. I understand. I'm just going to, okay, thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, so again, Windows customers, I'm sorry. I know there's people out there that ask. I'm like, I have nothing against Windows. It's just that we don't have that certification yet. And we're ready to do it. We'll do it. It's just in the engineering queue, but it's not available at this time. I'm sorry.
Okay. Some viewers voiced their concern of longevity of the APB system. What would happen if, let's say, a new Thunderbolt connection came out? Is there a possibility to adjust the box's connections? So I know we kind of covered that in a... Yeah. The European Union thankfully told Apple, stop changing the connector. And Apple said, okay. So that's why Thunderbolt, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever they're going to call it, it's all got to have the same connector. It's got to have that USB-C connector. Even like the iPhones now have a USB connector style, the latest ones that came out. That's part of that whole lawsuit. So there's something beyond the scope of what we do here in Pro Audio that has said the connector will be the same for a long time. I don't think Europe's going away anytime soon, so I think it's that way. But to answer the question, I showed you the box earlier. You saw how the Thunderbolt part was its own card. Yeah. So if ever there was another connector, literally it's just that card that we would swap out, and possibly the back panel, where the holes lined up. Yeah. We give you a different back panel and a different card. You could buy it in a kit. You can probably install it yourself. It's just 4 screws, and it slides out to the side. Basically, take the back panel off, take 4 screws out of the Thunderbolt card. It slides off to the side, and then you take it out. So it's pretty serviceable, and it's made that way. Even some Thunderbolt 2 customers might say, hey, can I upgrade to Thunderbolt 3? I'm like, yes, you could. But right now, you can spend $50 on a converter cable that Apple still makes and supports, or you can give us, it's going to be in the hundreds of dollars to do it, because it's that card. And anyway, and I answer your question though is that, if there was ever a connector change, we're ready for that. But I think with the current implementation of APB 8s and 16s with a USB-C connector in the back, we really have twice the bandwidth that we need to do 80 channels on a Thunderbolt single bus. And that connector is going to be around for a long time. Good. So, yeah, that's good. Because one thing that when I initially looked at it, the concerning thing for me was, because there's no hands-on control, it's like I've got a West Audio NG bus compressor there, and even if the support for it digitally for the recall aspect of it went down and I couldn't use it as for the recall purpose, I've still got all the parameters on the front panel to use it as an analog box. Whereas the APB doesn't have any of that, so it very much relies on that connection. But so that's good to know that there is massive longevity in this.
Yeah, and like the West Audio product, those are great products, and they've done a great job. So I want to tip my hat to them. And so you're right. It's great to have the hands-on connectivity. Also, people ask me, well, if the Thunderbolt connection has longevity too. Also, McDSP's been around for 25 years. And we support products that we made 25 years ago. So I definitely have that part figured out. Is that going forward? I think we definitely have. I hope people understand we have a track record for supporting software for a long, long time. Hell, we've only had, because I'm an idiot, our company in 25 years has only had three paid upgrades. The current ones, which is version 7. So we charge version 7, version 6, and version 5. But those are all spaced out by about 6 years each. So it's like, not greedy. I just want to make cool stuff, and there you go.
That's good.
So,
I'll tell you about a dream I had one day. So I had this dream, and it was when I was first looking at the APBs, and I first got one in, and I had this dream that I had an APB console, and it was bright green, and each channel had a basic APB channel strip, and then the summing was all controlled by the APB. There was bus compressor and an EQ. Would there be a possibility? Like, is that a possibility with?
It's funny you should ask it that way, Paul. So I will answer it in this very cautious way. Every plugin that we do these days, we model it with a CAD system. So whenever you see like the final, it kind of looks real, cool, neat, whatever. But there's some CAD design for that box. It is to scale, like a 19-inch rack thing, or like the MuX mixer, big mixing console. Yes, that's a giant CAD design. So if we got crazy enough, any one of those, that's right, we could turn it into physical box, and wow, it would have maybe Thunderbolt in the back, and we would just send some control signals out to the computer and on its way to the APB box. Yeah, that would be really cool, wouldn't it? And then to your point about it'd just be nice to have the controllability. I'm like, we could sort of add that later if we were compelled to do so. So that is like currently, like you say, it's kind of a dream right now, but it definitely is part of the architecture of the box. Is, well, what if we ever wanted to make a controller for it? Oh, it's just talk over Thunderbolt and it'd be fun because that connector is never going to change. Thank you, European Union. Okay, great. And then, so that is not off the table, if you will. You never know. Customers are always welcome to tell me, we want one of these. I'm like, okay, we can put it in the queue. Got it.
Is there, just to jump straight to this question, this is a question that I thought of. Are there any plugins, anything that's coming that could be spoken about?
Maybe. I might be working on currently or working fully functional prototypes I think sound pretty good. One of them might be the Bob module from the 6060 Ultimate Module Collection. It has a super low sub thing. I thought I'd make an APB version of that just to see, kind of like our discussion with the equalizer. Just an EQ. We should try one. Wow, that sounds pretty good. So we took the Bob module, the sort of low end, super bass kind of, Bob stands for bass optimized bias. We made an APB version of those, and we were like, and we just A/B it against the, software only Bob module. Go, that's good. But then put on the analog one and go, there's so much more low end, but those are the same settings. I don't understand. That's okay. Don't touch it. Just like Paul Studio. Don't touch it. It works. Set it aside. So that might be coming out eventually. We also will have like a tape simulation, possibly 2. I have sort of 2 of them kicking around right now. I like the first one, but I don't think I just want to, we had 2 ways of doing it. And so there might be 1, possibly 2 eventually tape modules that come out. And then like the Royal Q and the Royal Mu, that pairing of like a compressor and equalizer, that was interesting. I think we might do another pair like that. Don't be like in the style of what the Royal Mu or Royal Q is, but just an equalizer and compressor that are kind of just, paired together because they look cool and I think they have a good sound. And that's some customer feedback about the Royal Q and Royal Mu where they like it. maybe something that's a little less colored, but a little more straightforward, or I don't know how to say that. But and then after all that, I'm like, wow, I told you. He's like, wow, he's just going. Yeah, sorry, talking to the engineer. We just tell you anything you need to know. So those are 4 approximate plugins that are in the queue right now. I'd like to get a couple of those out soon. And then more a little bit longer term is that Dolby Atmos. Some of our customers actually use Dolby Atmos and APBs together. So they want to see Atmos versions of some of these products, which I don't think is unreasonable. And so we're working on some stuff like that.
Just the channel count with Atmos, because obviously if you've got, say 7.12 as a minimum, what's that, 10 channels?
Yeah.
You're using up a lot of channels quick.
Use a ton. Very good. Yes, exactly. And there's an L18 limiter for the APB right now, which has a surround version, which will have all the 7.1.2 support. But people are asking us now, like, now that you have the Atmos, full on bus is available, and as a for a plugin process. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's 16 channels. Yeah, and I'm like, all right. So just in case we're all on the same page here, that's 16. You got an APB 16? I sure do. So you have one Atmos, stem thing. That's what you got. Like, yep, I'm down for that. I'm like, okay. So then we do have a couple of mock-ups of some of those too. I wouldn't call them fully fleshed out prototypes. They're more like, here's conceptually how we might do it. And actually, if there's any Dolby Atmos clients listening, a couple have asked us specifically, this is what they want. I'm totally happy to hear what they want to have, because some of the Dolby Atmos it's like I won't say the Wild West, but it's a new frontier in mixing, and some people want certain types of features that are only known to them, or that because they have the mixing experience with it, they know kind of what they want. Oh yeah, I can do one of those. Oh, why do you want to configure this way? Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. Yes, we can do it that way. We can add that feature.
Brilliant.
I said the over-answer policy. Yeah, roughly 4 plugins in the progress. Bob, tape 1, maybe tape 2, and then a pairing of a compressor and an EQ. Maybe we'll call it the big C and the big Q. I don't know. That's just an idea. Maybe.
So
maybe it's already.
What is a really good? What I found is a really good selling point of the APB is that once you buy the box, you get all the plugins with it.
Yep.
Then you get everything that's you're talking about going forward. So it's an ever-growing, expanding box of tricks that's, in 5 years' time, it could be twice as many plugins.
Yeah, I do have an obsessive compulsive disorder, which I've channeled into audio programming and not much else. So it's like, as my wife can tell you, in my sleep, I will fix bugs and wake up, fix that bug. She's like, please shut up.
Brilliant.
And go back. Write it down on the notepad next to your nightstand. I'll give you, thank you.
That's exactly
so awesome.
I sleep with a notepad next to my nightstand, just because the amount of things I wake up in the middle of the night, and the reason I do that is because the amount of times I've woken up and I've thought of a great idea and I thought I'll remember that by the morning, and I never do. I've forgotten it.
No, exactly. But I think that if you work on something like your studio, it's amazing. It didn't happen in a day. It's years and years and years. At first, probably just mixing. And other people's studios go, oh, I like this part about the studio. Oh, I hate this part about the studio. And you think about all the things you like, then you put it together, and it takes years to do that. So your brain is just, you're connecting all these synapse, neuron thingamadoos, and it's all just connected. And even when you sleep, they're still going and talking to each other or whatever it is. Man, that's crazy. Oh, that's exactly what your brain, that's why you have dreams. It's because you have dreams, because you're thinking about this stuff even while you sleep. So it totally makes sense. So that is, in that case, that's me. Is that, I'm not a great musician. I shouldn't mix your band's record. It would be terrible. Call my friend Paul. He's a beautiful studio. Go do that. But if you want me to make gear, that's what I'm good at. So I'm going to do it until I drop dead, and I am going to live for a long time. So that's all I can say. I'm going to be trying to beat Rupert Neve. Rupert Neve was 96, and a super genius guy. I'm and just on that note, why did Rupert Neve live so long? Because he's probably thinking about audio all the time. So instead of I'm getting too old, I just turn on the telly and watch it and sit down on my couch and have a bowl of pudding. No, he's hey, I got this new thing. I got this idea. He probably had a notepad next to his nightstand. So I was like, please write down your idea, shut up and go back to sleep. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And just, so I think that, I honestly believe that, and it is my I'd like to be here forever, so I am going to keep doing this, and I enjoy making that products for APB customers. It's a great box. I like making regular plugins. And we intend to have quite the large array of plugins. People ask me, well, at some point you can't give away all the plugins for free. I'm like, that's true. But right now, if you were to purchase one, everything that we're making, you're getting for nothing. So there you go.
So what you're saying there is, technically speaking, even if later down the line you were to say start charging for plugins later down the line, the people that are in the ecosystem now, they're kind of almost like a loyalty, you get everything.
Oh yeah. I mean, at some point we can't give everybody everything, but we'll make it very clear. Like at some point, okay, the next plugin is the first one we're going to charge for. However, all you current APB customers and people who buy it by this date, you're getting this one in the next, 5 plugins, for free or something. We'll have some kind of policy like that. At least we're saying, like, if we're going to like cut the line, we'll tell people when, and say, even if you're in it just now, we'll give it some number of like plugins forward, something like that. Because I think that to make the jump to an ATB, it is expensive, and it's not because it's analog is expensive to make, everybody. It's called hardware, not easyware. Anyway, we would definitely anybody that has a box now, we would fully extend support for them, for free product for some period of time after such an announcement, if it were to happen. But right now I'm of the mind to say, look, I think that there's only I think 10 or 11 different products on there. I think we need like another probably 5 or 7 at least to get people, okay, that's going to be a robust mind state of what we got, and then deliver it.
At the moment, looking at the plugin list, it's very compressor heavy. There's a lot of compression on there. The new saturation, that drive unit's really good. I was impressed with that. That was really nice.
Yep. And so like that, like I mentioned, like the Bob module, just some bass optimized crazy thing. Yeah, that's not really thing. Tape is kind of like compression, but it's kind of like tape, so it's a different thing. I think some different equalizers that, this combination of a digital equalizer with an analog outboard, the back end or output stage or something, those are pretty compelling products.
Do you know something I just thought of was with like with the plugins, for instance, there's mid-side built into the EQ, which I was really impressed with, and so like there's so the mid-side processing that's on like the EQ, that's something I didn't think the box would do. Is there some sort of, I don't know, like because obviously you've got one channel, and then you're phase flipping,
all that stuff. Yeah, we do the mid-side processing on a digital side, because that way, you're right, every channel on the AP is its own path. And we do that because we don't want any crosstalk or any other stuff. It's a whole other topic. The mid-side's done on the digital side, which I think is fine, because if you have you have like the mid, the sum of the left and the right on the one hand, and you have the difference in the other. I'm like, difference. I'm like, what if it gets really small? I'd like to do that in the digital domain, where I don't have a noise floor to worry about, or in the analog domain, I don't know. But that's how we do it. Even people ask me, like the limiters we make, the limiter, that's all limited right up actually to like the 0 dB. In the analog domains, like the L18 or the L-move, they're analog limiters. But then there's like an output trim. Oh, what's that? Yeah, that's a digital trim afterwards. So you have the maximum signal to noise ratio, and then you just dial back to what the maximum level you actually want. But inside the analog domain, we're going right up to 0. Right, to just give you the maximum signal throughput. Lambert, sorry. Yeah, so mid-side we can do, and and the saturation box, you bring it up, is the KD one. It turned out super, and we're doing more stuff like that too. So it's a good time. It's really, I'd say it's fun to use the product. It is really fun to program it, because you're like, once you get it dialed in, you're like, oh, it sounds pretty good. Everybody come, it sounds great. We heard enough. Just finish it. All right, I'm sorry, it was really cool. I'm going to talk to Paul tomorrow morning. Okay, you talk to Paul, you get back writing those codes. Okay, I'm writing more code today, I promise. Do I get lunch today? We need 100 lines of code, and we'll give you a sandwich. Okay, that sounds fair. I'm actually in prison. I never escaped. This is just a image behind me. I'm actually like in a cement cell with no windows, and just a laptop.
Oh, blimey. Going on to the next question. Some comments on our review we did expressed that it was crazy expensive, 4,000 for the APB-A and 6,000 for the APB-60. Personally, I don't think it's crazily expensive. I get that. But would a 2-channel or 4-channel ever be something that's considered, or an interface, something that's going to be?
Yeah, no, I can. Paul, I cannot confirm or deny the rumors that possibly a 2-channel audio interface with APB capability might be something we could be contemplating maybe in the future, possibly.
We heard it here first.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, no, it is expensive because there's lots of channels in it. But so, yes, a broken down 2-channel version, yeah, who wouldn't want that? It's like, yeah.
Well, especially with the tracking capabilities you're talking about, or not talking about, or could be talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's I'm just tell people the box is configured to do it. We just need some cooperation from the DAWs and massaging some driver stuff a little bit. It is possible.
So what about the option of APBs utilizing preamps, like having the APB doing preamp?
Yeah, that would be also something, maybe because you kind of, Colin, wait a minute. So you got this buffer from the DAW. Why don't you just put like an APB circuit, like, on the input, and then, just control it. And then it would have, zero latency. Yeah, zero. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Why wouldn't you want, who would want that? I don't know. Where's me and just Paul just spitballing? I don't know. I don't know. What we're talking about? Oh yeah, that's right. I'm in a cement cage. I never see the light. I haven't seen the sun for like 7 years. Ever since I started the APB, that's why I'm so pale, and the hair's barely hanging on, and I'm just kind of, I'm dropping weight, and I don't know. Those are all good ideas, and ones that have been suggested, not just by you, Paul, or by other clients. Just they say, hey, I just want like a 2-channel version that's portable. I want like all those ideas are on the table. If people say, well, I haven't done it yet, I'm like, well, that COVID thing happened. That might have interrupted a few things for a lot of people. And McDSP is a small company, but I like the team we have. It's kind of like your studio, Paul. You have it all set up, and you like no one. It's just you in there, and that's how you like it. And I'm like, we have a small elite team of like Navy SEAL equivalent of engineer people here, and that's what we do. And we're not gonna go take over a country, but if you want us to take out some world leader, we can do that. No, that's a terrible analogy, but that we're very good at what we do, and so we select the projects that we do, and we work on them, and they come out. And so we all like what we're doing, and we're gonna do it for a long time.
Did the AKM fire affect you? Because I heard you say you had AKM chips in there.
We do, and it's no accident that I have some fancy synthesizers behind me. And no, my blue Roland SH11 with the hand grip is not for sale. Anyone who's going to ask, because that's mine. I got it for $50 in 1989 from a pawn shop. Yeah, whoa! So Paul, like you, or maybe not as much as you, I do hoard things like pro audio gear and synthesizers. So when it came down to those AKM chips, yes, the fire was very bad, but many of the specialty one parts that we have no other possible alternative for, I hoarded them. So we had like enough on hand for like a year and a half of APB production, even after the fire. And also AKM, that is company, they're great. They're just like, we had a fire, we're sorry, we're getting back online. They kept us in the loop the entire time, and I'm quite happy to continue using that company's parts. They did a great job. And their converters are great. They give you the specs. You're like, really? Well, that's good for you. That's impressive. Okay, moving on. And so, yeah.
So finally, any final words on the APB or?
Oh gosh, it was a fun product to design. It was kind of like a silly idea that someone sort of joked about at lunch. We're like, wait. Well, we could do that. We could just take out the software algorithm, just drop in an analog algorithm, control it, from the same software brains we already got. And that means we'd have like a fleet of plugins we could possibly make that's already done. We just have to implement them for the analog circuitry. And who wouldn't want that? And, here we are, years later, we've been selling the APBs for a couple of years now. They're great. They're so much fun to program. Everything that comes out of them sounds great. It's like, wow, I feel competent.
Were you the first to kind of go down this route, or were there?
And I think there's like you mentioned West Audio,
Yeah.
or Tigler Audio,
Yeah.
a Better Maker, and those are all great companies and they do a great job. We just thought, I think we can take the analog programmability and combine it with a sample accurate control over Thunderbolt, so that to install an APB is just turn it on, connect it via Thunderbolt to your computer, word clock signal, and you're done. And now you have 16 channels of outboard gear ready to go at the ready. It's like, yes. So it also appeals to my, easy to set up, thing. Studios are so complicated. I look at them and go, wow, I could never run a studio because it would take me years just to connect all the wires and not screw up. So I'm like, yeah. So the APB is just, I don't know. Final thoughts. It was fun to make. It is fun to program, and it sounds great. What's not to like?
I love it. I think it's a great product, and it's got a lot. It's got a lot going for it. It's got a lot of. It's got so much that it can offer, which one box. Like, you buy a piece of analog equipment, it offers one thing. It is that box, whereas this is so much more.
Yeah. It is really. It turned out really good. Yeah, and I also say thank you to every customer that's bought an APB or 5 or 10 APBs. We really appreciate it. It's we need the support from the user base to believe in the product and to use it and tell other people about it. And that's the best marketing any company could have. And we get a lot of good support from all our users for the last 25 years, really. So I really appreciate it. Thank you all very much.